Hi, I'm Patsy O'Neill and I'm a makeup artist.
Hello and welcome to the Art Podcast, where we get to know creative women from around the world of visual arts. I'm Chris Stafford and this is Season 2, Episode 35. My guest this week is British makeup artist Patsy O'Neill, whose career was founded in the 90s in MTV and has spanned the world of TV, music, commercials, film and editorial. Patsy was born in 1975 in the shadow of West Ham Football Ground in East London. Her parents, Robert O'Neill, an electrical engineer, and Julia Dooley, a nurse and practice manager, were Irish immigrants. Patsy is the middle of 3 children. She has an older brother and younger sister, and she was educated at the Ursuline Convent School for Girls in Forest Gate, London. Her love of the arts could be seen in her constant drawings as a child and interest in fashion. So it was no surprise that she chose to study design fashion styling for makeup and hair at the London College of Fashion, from where she graduated in 1993. From there, she chose to start working in the business to get hands-on experience, which is where her early opportunities created a pathway for her career. She has, she says, done just about everything in the business and loves to share her knowledge by mentoring interns and graduates. Her roster of celebrity clients are some of the most recognisable women on the red carpet and have led her to having her work showcased at the Oscars. Patsy lives in London with her partner Richard Jakes and her son Arlo. Patsy, welcome to the Art Podcast.
Hello. Thanks, Chris.
Well, it's lovely to have you here because, we love to embrace the makeup artists, the costume designers, all the people in the business that often get ignored. And I know that you're a great friend of Kerry September, who was on the show back in February on Season 2, Episode 6, I think it was. And you've worked with Kerry.
Yes. Yeah. We got introduced many moons ago by a mutual friend, a costume designer called Claire Anson, who it must have been the late 90s. And she said, "Oh, you'll love my friend Kerry." And I said, "Oh," and she went, "My friend Kerry will love you." And then we ended up meeting, and then we worked together on quite a few pop videos. And we just, I don't know, hit it off. She's so brilliant to work with and as a collaborator. And I think we did some Smashing Pumpkins videos together. We did one, and we've done all various things, but it was mainly in the late 90s we worked together. And we've been friends ever since. It sort of developed from a working relationship to a friendship.
So for people who don't understand how the industry works, Patsy, if you get a gig and you need an assistant or someone to work with you on a project, do you get to call that? How does it work?
Yes, if you have been booked by a director or an editor for a shoot or a video or any kind of collaboration, you are as the designer, the makeup designer, you put the team together. So you might then go, "Oh, I need someone an equal to me." So that would be another makeup artist of your caliber. And then you would maybe want 2 assistants. And then you might want someone who's fresh from studying, who, they'll get a lot of experience from watching you work. So me and Kerry never worked under each other. We always worked together. And that's what we really loved. And recently we worked on a job together about a month ago. And it was it was a really heartwarming job because it was for another good friend of ours, a costume stylist, art director, Zeba. And it was one of those jobs where we were just working with wonderful people, and it was for a charity. And we both at the end of the day were like, wow, that was a good day. We filled our pots up with a kind of a really good creative energy. So, yeah, but we don't work together that much anymore, but we always like to when the opportunity comes up.
Yes, well, it's nothing like working with friends whose work and you can rely on, obviously. That's important.
Yeah, because I think you create a dance between you. It's a funny thing to say, but if you're working with people and it's people centered and you need to make them feel good and they're in an uncomfortable environment, you're vulnerable in a makeup chair, we can work quite nicely together and it flows. But those sorts of rhythms come with years and years of knowing how to make people feel at ease if they're not used to being in front of a photographic camera or a film camera.
And establish that synergy, as you say, which is so important in a work environment.
Yes, which is something I'm sort of getting understanding a little bit more as I've got older. I'm realizing the power and the sort of the amount we give and how that is of service to other people, even though we're not saving lives. There's a whole nother skill set that comes with the creative element and the kind of just understanding people element.
And it also infuses confidence as well, especially when you're bringing in younger people who are new to the industry or there for the experience. You want to imbue that confidence so that they feel comfortable and, reassured by the environment as well. So it's a huge collaborative effort, I would imagine. The team is all important.
It is. And I think in film, I've dabbled in that arena, but I've never really been in it for a long period of time. There has to be a huge amount of collaboration, but there's still a hierarchy. I've been far more commercial and music and fashion and TV. So I've been a lot in small teams and small groups. And I think mentoring is crucial. In the film world, the hierarchy kind of feeds that mentoring. Whereas in my world, I would say the more commercial side is you have to look out for yourself, but you have to watch your back. But I also love looking out for new people or encouraging new people and helping them understand that they have kind of ownership of their skill set and to not be taken, not to be less than in the industry, because the problem sometimes being seen as female in the glamorous side is you're less than. And I've had to hold production managers to account and say, sorry, you're not paying overtime. Why is that? The sound man is getting overtime. Is it because you don't need my services? Because if you don't need my services, then I might just finish now then, because I don't really want to do a 16-hour day for nothing. And I like encouraging the young people coming up to have confidence in their language and how they communicate with kind of anyone that's trying to book them creatively. So don't ever be undermined. But it depends on the area you're working in. If you're working in music or fashion, you will tend to be regarded more because they understand the importance of the creative element a makeup artist brings in. So, but sometimes you can be seen as less than. But then if someone's not looking great, they'll have something to say. So it's really interesting. But yeah, back to mentoring. I like holding the hands of people starting out. And I always sort of wonder, why is that? I had a few good mentors when I started out, or people I assisted, and I think that makes a difference.
Now, is it important to be represented, to have an agent, to all the bookings to go through those agents, or do you prefer if they come to you? How does the mechanism work most effectively?
It's changed over the years. So there is agents around now. There's always been really good agencies out there. And agencies, you can be represented by an agent, or you could have an agent that just manages your work. I've had agents that manage my work rather than manage me. But you can have either or. But an agency they're back in the sort of early millennium and 90s, an agent would send out your portfolio to different clients. And then digital age changed everything. And it meant you could represent yourself more. So everyone started getting websites. I used to send out my portfolio myself. And I think I was just very lucky when I started out in saying yes at the right time. in the right moment and then really enjoying what I was doing. And then that feeds into a family tree of clients and jobs and saying yes. So that connection will still happen even if you had an agent, because they'd connect you up with a client. So an agent is great because they will find the makeup artist on their books, the right one for a job that's come into them. But they can sometimes take quite a big percentage and then charge your client a percentage. So that they're really good. And if you need one at a certain time, they're really helpful. I've only used an agent really for my bookings and managing me. They're more like a manager agent at times. That's what I've done. And I've let work happen organically for years, which I think means you can then be quite vast in your array of saying yes. You can be in charge of saying yes or no, rather than an agent saying, you really need to do these. Or, I don't, it's quite empowering not having an agent, and it's really helpful having an agent. There's pros and cons to both.
Yes, I mean, to be in control of your own gigs. But you are, of course, very established now in the business, Patsy. And the use of a website and social media these days makes such a big difference, of course, to have that visibility. I'm thinking that is something that, now that you're established, empowers you too, as you say, the networking that you've done. It means that you can pretty much call the shots, I would imagine.
Well, yeah, you'd think that, but when things sort of changed, sort of 2004, I think it was, you really had to step up and be a part of the change, the digital change. And some people were amazing with embracing that side with a presence, and some people aren't. So it depends on where you're coming from. I, from day one, saw Instagram as a free portfolio, free marketing place for my portfolio. I never saw it as anything else than that. And then I realized people were imparting their everyday life, or what they really think about the world, or what they're reading. And that, I was a bit like, whoa, that's my friends. That's my life. That's me. I don't know. I've always thought that's private. And then I didn't know what the dance was with it. But I've definitely now see Instagram is a platform for my work, but it also has brought me work, which is very interesting. Even though I'm not the most, I go through peaks and troughs with Instagram. Does that, I don't use it as a platform as other makeup artists do, but I also think that's amazing what they're doing. So I think, like doing tutorials and stuff, I haven't really monopolized on that. But I love imparting knowledge, and I like the expert angle of my skill set. Like, I know an awful lot of different things. If someone asks me something, they're like, oh gosh, can't you do a video of that? And I'm like, oh yeah, I could. But there's something that has stopped me. But I probably will have to work on that. As the times change, we have to grow with it. It would be like someone saying 15 years ago, I don't want to set up a website. Well, you kind of, nowadays, you kind of need more of an Instagram profile. A website's handy, but depending on how technical you are, like I've got friends that are just amazing on a computer, PC or a Mac. They're just a natural, and it's a place where they feel comfortable. And some people aren't. So then you struggle with updating and keeping on top of things. And I often rely a lot on stylists and hairstylists and younger people I've worked with who just will go, oh, Patsy, this is how you do this. I'm like, oh my gosh. And if I'm shown 3 times, I'll more likely get my head around it. People like to know what you're using, how you've achieved the look, and imparting that information is another side of the industry, which is completely new.
People love the how-tos, don't they, these days?
Yeah. And there's some people I know have really transitioned to being more like social media or content creators. And I still see myself as a working artist, and I will do stuff that imparts my expertise. when I feel I want to do it, or if someone approaches me to be like an ambassador for a brand, I like collaborating with people or brands that I really like or I feel passionate about. That's quite exciting. And being a bit of a geek, I love all the cosmetic science side of stuff, which is really interesting. Sort of the 360 circle of all of it, and then sort of questioning it all as well. That's where I go off on a tangent.
Well, you are a London girl. You're in the mecca of creativity there in the UK. And you very much are a London girl at heart because you were born in London, weren't you? And from Irish parents.
Yes.
And it's interesting, you spend a bit of time in Ireland as well, of course, because of that family background. But what were your early days of growing up like in East London, wasn't it? Which area exactly in East London did you grow up?
East Ham, near West Ham football ground. But we went to all the Catholic schools.
Inevitably, I suppose, if you come from an Irish background.
Yes.
Was that terribly strict? Was it everything that you imagine a Catholic school to be?
No, I think immigrant parents, Irish immigrant parents, they stuck within their group of their circle of friends. And the schools it was more about the community and the church, really. And I've since, as I suddenly got to about the age of 14, woke up quite quickly. I thought everyone went to church. And then I realised that not everyone goes to church. And I remember thinking my brother was being confirmed. And I thought, I don't want to do this. I don't really like any of these guys in the big outfits and the cardons. I was like, there's something I don't like here. It's like my gut instinct. And I refused to be confirmed. But luckily, my parents were pretty chilled about it. My mum, dad was the one that took us to church on Sundays. But mum, I think that was her respite from 3 kids under 6 at certain points growing up. But we used to go to sort of lots of Irish dances, and they socialised within big groups of Irish people. And we used to go to, festivals and fairs. And I think the secondary school was stricter because that was a convent school I went to, and that still operates. It was a bit like Hogwarts. It was big walls, brown kilt skirt uniform, and that was strict. You weren't allowed out at lunch. And my brother went to the boys' school around the corner, but no one, would really mess with me because of my brother. But they also would be like, oh, that's Paul's sister. So it was like I just was a vessel for gossip for the girls about the boys' school rather than my, no one was interested in me and my brother's friend group, put it that way. But yeah, I'd say it was interesting. As you hit sort of teenage years, you suddenly wake up to what is familiar, and that being, oh, not everyone does what we do, and that probably, I think the community I grew up in kept the naivety within me. I was a bit green, but then streetwise in some aspects, because it's only hindsight, you go, God, I had a very cool mum. She was a practice manager, a nurse. And even though she came from the middle of nowhere, she was very good at mothering and giving you that kind of, you can do that, but this is the boundary. And if you can go and hang out with your friend across the road, but I want you back by 9:30 p.m. But you knew my mum, she wouldn't give you that leash if you didn't respect her rules. So kind of only now, as I've got older, go, oh wow, she was pretty good, until I left home and I was like, I'm not coming back. And I packed my Mini, my first car I bought.
I'm wondering what you remember of your grandparents and if you had any special relationships with your Irish ancestry.
Oh yes, that's something I'm very into currently, and have always have been. I've always been very, I've never felt English. And then I did do you know what? It was Kerry September that gave me a discount for a DNA test. And there'd always been these rumours in our family of some sort of Spanish thing on my mum's side. Anyway, that got all thrown out the window because one of my parents is 100% Irish and one is 95% Irish. So, and it's all from the Munster region, which is where my dad's family are from, in Kerry, Kenmare. And he's one of 9. And then before that, my great grandfather was one of 10. So the history is deep there. And then no one really left Ireland until my dad's family. And only my dad and his brother, John Henry, came to England, and the rest went to America. So I've got 4 aunts in America, 2 uncles, but currently there's only 1 uncle left and 1 aunt. A lot of people have passed away over the last sort of 10, 15 years. And then my mum was a real country girl in Ireland. And I think maybe it's her side that's got a tiny bit of Scandinavian. And then, no one left on her side either until she did. And so going back to where she was from was like the middle of nowhere.
Which was where? Where did she grow up?
She was born in a place called Durrow, near Abbey a little tiny hamlet in the middle of nowhere between those areas, which is near Kilkenny-Laois borders. Near the bottom of the hill from where Oliver Cromwell marched his men back in the day. And there was a hill that we used to always go up, and my dad always had camper vans or a converted van of sorts. So it would be like a makeshift camper van. And he'd build a bed in the back, and then he'd literally put a sofa in the back seat, in the back bit where the door slides open. We had a red velour sofa wedged between 2 walls and a wooden sort of pallet behind as a bed.
I'm just visualising this, Patsy.
Oh, it was brilliant. We would drive from London to Holyhead through North Wales every summer, and it would take 2 or 3 days, and we'd stop and all sleep in the van. And we had the Mothercare yellow potty, which was hilarious, that we all used to wee in. And then we'd stop in the mountains in the middle of nowhere in North Wales on the side of a verge and sleep there. And then we'd carry on the drive the next day. Because back in the 70s and early 80s, the roads were treacherous getting to Holyhead. I remember them really well in this van. But once we were in Ireland visiting family, Mum and Dad would sleep in the van at her parents' place. And me and my brother would have a 1-bedroom, and it was my step granny would have her room. And it was a traditional Irish house, which was 3 rooms. You walked in, the range, a table, some chairs. One side was a bedroom, the other side was a bedroom. No bathroom, an outside loo in an old pigsty, and a tin bath. And it was me and my brother remember it more than my sister, because she was the younger one. And technology and times changed, and I called her Nanny in the Chick Chicks. She ended up getting a bathroom built in one of the bedrooms, which was like the height of luxury in probably 1983, I'd say.
Which is not that long ago, isn't it? But it just speaks to the rustic nature of rural Ireland, doesn't it?
Totally. And the range was still going. That was the only source of heat for cooking, everything. And I am so grateful I had that window because of knowing that life. And also we could run free. We used to run down to the River Shannon when we were at my mum's family's house. We'd just go to hay bales with second cousins, third removed, that kind of malarkey, and just jump off hay bales and have a great time. And there was a wildness that we had to that total freedom. But I'd say it was probably quite hard work for my mum and dad doing the trekking back there. It wasn't a holiday for them. I remember my mum always saying, "It wasn't a holiday for me." And I can imagine that. And, but it was magical for us. And I think me and my brother's memories are really strong. But as I've grown older and I've had boyfriends whose families are brought up in normal English homes, I realised what I experienced was quite different because I felt like anyone that left Ireland in the 60s, Ireland was still so far behind with so many different things, culture, religion, feminism, and the church had controlled them all for years. So I now look back and go, I realise, it was great that I had that element, but culturally there was so much then did happen, like from the 90s onwards in Ireland. And my mum sold our family home in London and went back. So then we became these people that went to visit mum in Ireland, and you're never completely Irish because you haven't got the accent. It's just, I don't know if that makes sense. You're not seen as the same.
You're an outsider now because you've adopted another accent. But that was a real gift that your parents were giving you, to give you that kind of holiday, that kind of freedom, which children don't have so much these days. I'm wondering if you take your son Arlo back there at all to experience any of that in any form, because I know he's a young teenager himself.
Yeah, so he's just turned 13, and he's very proud and knows an awful lot about his sort of family history and his roots, because I'm really interested in storytelling and finding out the truth and learning from where we've come from. And he's really interested in it. And when I go and see my mother, who sadly is in a nursing home in Ireland at the moment and is the best carers ever, but we go and see her, and she and my son and all her grandchildren, she's a very funny woman. She's sensitive but very funny, and she can be quick-witted and cheeky with my son, and I love that. And he's a very sociable young man, and I can see his Irishness in him. I can see so much of my brother. I can see this kind of vivaciousness he has, which he's great with people. And I love that about him. But when I take him back, we try and soak up as much as we can. So often it's, I'm actually going there for a reason, spend time with my mum. But I've taken him on little adventures. But the last trip we went was it May half term? We had a couple of big waterfall hikes, sort of all around the Sleeve Bloom Mountains. And then we flew into Shannon, and we went to an old castle. And I just want him to understand the land and the history, and just show him stuff. I might not even be telling him things, but I just really expose him to as much as possible. And on the way back to the airport on the last day, we had quite a few hours to kill. So we did the Atlantic Highway of County Clare, which is so stunning. And the rocks look purple rather than grey. It's just insane. And then we got to this beautiful beach called Fallour Beach. And we went down and we were messing around. We saw these three young lads, they must have been in their 20s, that just ran into the sea, had taken their clothes off, had their togs and their towels, and ran back out. And as we were walking back up, Arlo said to them, what's it like in there? And the fellas went, it's really warm. We warmed it up. It's just like a bath. And then Arlo looked at me, went, Mum, should we go in? And I was like, yeah, come on. So we just went to the car. We didn't have any swimming stuff. I said, well, I'll go in my underwear. You go in your pants. We'll grab some of the pajamas and pretend they're a towel. So we went down to the beach, got all our clothes off, and we both ran in. It's the Atlantic as well, it was just magical. And he was like, that's the best thing ever. And I think it's always just trying to be, yes, let's do something that's different. And then we just dried ourselves off. We had such fun. And since then, he's come cold water swimming with me a couple of times a week at the ponds in Hampstead. So I take him to the mixed ponds now. He's like, yeah, I'm jumping in. And I'm like, yes.
You've started a family tradition there, Patsy.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the storytelling, and apparently your family were into storytelling and folk music.
Yeah, Mum's dad was a farmer, and really looked like an Irish farmer. Very handsome man, very tall, John Dooley. And he died quite young in his 50s, but all I know is he always had an accordion, they called it a squeeze box in Ireland, didn't they? And there was always singing and drinking and storytelling, which is called Shana Key. Do you know that phrase? The storytelling.
I don't.
I might not be pronouncing it properly, but it looks like you've spelt Sean Choice, but it's Shana Key, which is the Gaelic for storytelling. And I remember as a child, like when my mum moved back, actually, you go to certain little pubs and you're there more for the community. It's like a second version of a church with less rules. And there'd always be someone would come in, and they'd come in to tell stories. And they're normally Gaelic folklore, and that's how entertainment happened years ago. And yeah, I think he was quite involved with that. But he died when I was 5 or 6, I think. So those memories were not so strong. Just ones from when I was very tiny. More stories from my mum, which she would tell me, because her mum died when she was 1. So her father was left with a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old in 1950. And yeah, his wife died at 39. And that was my grandmother. So he then had these 2 babies to bring up on his own, John Dooley. And he did he did marry again when my mum was 8 or 9. But all of her childhood, was, grandparents down the road and him. And I think a lot of people back then said, because he was a young man with 2 children on his own, orphaned, apart from him as a father, and he was a working farmer, labourer, said, oh, put the 2 children, they'd be better off in an orphanage. And he refused, which was pretty amazing, because it would have been easier for him to do that. So they were spared that, thank goodness. I think it's hard enough sometimes being brought up in rural Ireland without a mother, and then imagine if you were put in a sort of orphanage, would have been horrific. But yeah, he did pretty well. But my mum did have I don't know if it's an Irish Catholic thing, but she wasn't really spoken to about her mother that died until she was older, and then she found out more and more, and just always wished that she'd seen a photograph of her when she was younger. Yeah, so I think that's why Mum was like, I want to have 3 children. But I remember her always celebrating big birthdays, like it was like, I've lived, because her mother died so young. It was like, I think there's that fear that I can only equate it now, being a mother myself, that you think, oh, is this going to happen to me? So, but yeah, and then my dad's families, they're just very, very different. I think they'd come from money originally. So I had a great grandfather that went to America in the 1800s, made money, came back with money to Kerry. So, and then I think there was a lot of gambling and drinking. But the women of Ireland keep everything together. Their kind of strength is unbelievable, which is something I'm looking at now. The sort of strength of Celtic women, the storytelling. I have a huge amount of friends that are Scottish, Welsh, and Irish. And it's the older I'm getting, I'm like, wow, I'm just surrounded by these kind of Celtic sort of powerhouse women. And I joke with my sister about this. I say, you and me are the first women in our family line that have had a choice over our identity, our career, our sexuality, our financial situations. And how amazing is that? It's actually a big thing. And I always make sure Arlo understands, he identifies as a male and as a boy. Yes, I want him to understand as much as he possibly can about the women in his family, because I think it's crucial for him to be the best version of himself. Yeah, I've gone off on a tangent there.
Well, I'm wondering about your childhood in terms of choices you mentioned there. What were those choices? What did you enjoy doing? What were you drawn to as a child in school and outside of school?
Always drawing and art. School was always art and drawing and making things and making anything in the garden, whether it was collecting rose petals and making a perfume and that sort of stuff. Building Lego. Me and my brother would build whole little worlds. I loved architecture with Lego, basically. And then it evolved onto fashion shows with Cindy dolls. Always loved clothes and fashion and design. Always loved aesthetics and how things looked or appeared, more like the beauty And it might necessarily be beautiful to someone else, what I found beautiful, but I would find beauty in things very independently, very young, to the point that my mum would be like, why are you moving that? Why? She didn't really get it. And I think that maybe because I had choice. My mum and my dad were very much a chair's a chair, a table's a table. We're getting on with life. We're surviving. We've come here. We've got our good jobs now and we're going to work hard.
Yeah, that's a very difficult, like practical, tangible, functioning lifestyle, isn't it, that they grow up with?
Totally.
That's very much of their generation. But you chose the beauty, you chose aesthetics and cosmetics. And I'm wondering if you were the girly girl with dolls and pretending makeup.
No. I loved the fashion shows with the Cinderellas and my sister because I love the clothes. But I was not interested in makeup. Maybe hair. I used to do my sister's hair all the time in braids, upside down pineapple, like literally torture her. But I'd also torture her doing gymnastics in the garden. I'd make up dance routines. And I had to do Irish dancing. And I was desperate to do ballet, tap and jazz. I really wanted to experiment. And my parents just sent me to Irish dancing, which is the most restrictive. It's creative, but it's restrictive with your arms. And that really frustrated me. But my art practice, I was always drawing, always recreating books like Meg and Mog. I just recreate all of them. Made my own magazines as a teenager. Loved making those. And then was obsessed with art at school.
Were you a good student?
And my dad would say this. I hate saying it, but it's the same. Willful. I'd work when I wanted to work. And if I loved something, I did it.
So very much an independent thinker then from those young ages.
Very young age. Yeah.
And then you chose the route of fashion. You went to fashion school.
Yeah.
Was that an easy decision to make? Were there some expectations or from your parents as to the direction you went in, or were you very much an independent thinker in terms of your own choice of career?
I'm very grateful that my parents always sung my praises for what I was good at. And she always said, whatever you're good at, you just put 100% into it. And she used to always say, she'd always show off any of my portfolio art, any of my big artwork. She would, if anyone came around, she'd be like, look what Patricia's done. And that, I think, when you're 9 or 10, you go, my mum approves of me. And I think there's something to be said for knowing they are impressed with your creativity. Whereas I had friends at school where I knew their parents wanted them to get and go on the graduate scheme at Barclays, or they wanted them to, there was an obsession. I could feel it. I didn't know it in my own household, but I could feel it in other people's houses of security and ticking boxes of what's expected. And I never had that from mum and dad. And I'm ever so grateful for that. Because then I wouldn't have I wouldn't have said yes to things that were outside of what I was exposed to. But little things like entering car design competitions and then winning and then being in the local paper. And that was a massive big deal to me as a sort of 11-year-old. It kind of makes you go, I'm good at this. And then why did I end up going to London College of Fashion? I really wanted to explore my art and mainly fine art. And I love the history of art. But something drew me, and it was an advert in a magazine at London College of Fashion, and it's really unusual course called Design, Fashion, Styling for hair and makeup. And I just went, yeah, I'll do it. And I couldn't believe I got in. There was 20 places, but you had to be good at art and you had to be good at English, and they were my subjects that I love geography. I love geography. And yeah, I'd studied there, and at that course, because you did everything. You did fashion illustration, which I loved. I did history of fashion. I did photography. I did art. I did makeup. You did hairstyling. So it was a course that you could then. A lot of people from my course went on to do the BA in fashion promotion or the BA in special effects, but then it was a HND. So it was a really diverse course.
And HMD
was what some of the creative degree courses were before they gave them a BA status.
Okay.
Yeah. More creative courses, really. But this is going way back. And I had an art teacher there who said, you've got to do your fine art. And I said, okay. So 2 years in a trot, I did my PCAS forms to go and do art. I was going to do fine art at Kingston. Then the second one was Camberwell. And once I'd finished at London College of Fashion, I went and travelled in America for a little bit and stayed with family and for 3 or 4 months. And then I came back and I turned down my place and I started assisting. And I remember the early days of having an answering machine at home. And I lived in London and I'd passed my driving test. I had my own car. So these things I now know are, they put me forward very quickly. Having your own car, it's, really young, under the age of 20, and living in central London are a bonus. I wasn't paying rent. So if an answer machine, I just contacted everyone when I was in my final year at London College of Fashion for assisting. But looking back, I was very shy, very quiet. I didn't say boo to a goose, but I had a willfulness. I knew I would say yes to anything. I'd be like, well, and then it was, there was a makeup artist called Liz Pugh, and she's still a very, very good makeup artist, does an awful lot of fashion. She's like a really cool woman. And she was looking for someone to help out on a TV show called The Word, which was a big music show back in the 90s. And I was like, yeah, I can be there. And I just always said yes to things. And looking back, I go, those yeses then lead to something else. And then when it came to the second year I applied to do my fine art degree, I then went, no, I'm earning money assisting. And it was small amounts of money back then, very small amounts of money, but enough to be able to go, I think I can leave home. I think I can pay rent. And I never went back.
What were you watching in those early days, on TV?
That's a good question.
That was catching your eye and your imagination to be creative as an artist and a designer?
Gosh, that's such a good question. I don't think I watched much TV as a kid, not at all. And it's funny, I didn't watch much TV in my 20s, but I did work on a lot of music. Worked with a lot of bands. So I was in the whole MTV, VH1 environment a lot in the 90s. But I think the biggest influence in the 80s was magazines. I loved magazines.
Were you cutting them out and, making your own scrapbooks?
Yeah. Loved it. Anything visual, anything that was an editorial fashion shoot. It was all the visual, and there was some really cool stuff back then. I don't know if did you watch the documentary on the sort of the 90s models one. It was really two really good directors. It's not a repeat documentary. It's a really beautiful one, all based around the Linda Evangelista days, the sort of, the main girls of the 90s. And that really sums it up. That fascinated me. But yet I didn't emulate that myself. I was not interested in makeup or beautifying myself. It was very interesting. I was very into my music, and I used to dye my hair crazy colours, and I'd probably dressed quite out there for like a student-y, hippie.
Was it punkish then? Was it with the coloured hair?
But I was more the indie era of the 90s. Yeah, I just was really into bleaching my hair and dyeing it red. I think that was a Tori Amos obsession. I was obsessed with Tori Amos. I wanted to look like her.
At that point, Patsy, I'm thinking you were exploring all the different options, all the different worlds that you could move around in then. There's so many different choices to be made. Was any one of those sort of you were gravitating towards, was there anything that you were thinking, this is what I want to do, this is the world I want to live in?
Yeah, when I started saying yes to music videos and working with bands, I loved the creative process, because then it was mood boards, putting a story together where I would come in. I did a bit of body painting and some really cool dance videos back in the 90s. And it was just the collaboration buzz. It was so brilliant. And everyone was in a similar boat. We were all in our mid-20s, early 20s, and we were all going, yes. The music scene was just big.
What were you listening to?
Oh, gosh. I really was brought up on my brother's taste, and that really knocked on to me. The Smiths, all the early indie days in the UK. So I loved Pixies, I loved the Smiths, The Cure. I had a massive poster of Robert Smith on my bedroom wall. I loved lyrics. So I loved happy music and sad music. And then I just loved music. So the minute I could be working in a world that was music and I could be doing makeup, I was in heaven. It was just great. And working with so many bands.
So a good night out for you included dancing, did it?
Yes, I think I was a bit late to going out. I didn't really drink or go out until my early 20s. So when I did start going out, I loved it. I loved dancing. But then in my early 30s, I started dancing, like doing jive and swing and Lindy, more jive. And I love it. So I love proper dancing now because I've learned. But
when you say proper dancing, what are you dancing to now?
Oh, if I go to a jive night, it's a proper ballroom. Everyone will be dancing with every different partner. And it's social. It's not competitive. It's just pure fun.
And where do you go?
There used to be weekenders. Me and my sister and a whole bunch of us would go. And we kind of knew about 25 people that would all jive as well. So we'd all go, right, let's go to this holiday camp. We're going to be there for 3 days, jiving every day. And we'd do that for a whole weekend. So all sorts of places. And I used to go to like sort of rockabilly and sort of bluegrass festivals where it would all be acoustic bluegrass music. And then we'd be jiving, or we'd be doing the stroll, which is an old American dance. Well, no, it's not an American dance, it's a group dance. So me and my sister really dived into that social world, and I loved it. That was like from my early 30s to my mid to late, well, till now. I still will go dancing. If a song comes on, I'll drag my son up and we'll dance. Or if I'm at a wedding, there's always someone that can dance, and you find them very quickly. And I'm not the best. I do it for joy and fun. I don't do it for skill. I do it because it just makes my heart sing. I love dancing. And my parents used to jive as a kid. Like, they used to jive. I remember it in the social clubs, the Irish social clubs. They were always dancing together. So you kind of remember that.
I just want to go back to something that I understand, did also in terms of your studies, and that was anatomy and physiology and pathology. You did a year of that, and something completely different was upholstery, which we'll talk about in a minute. But those are both in the same sentences somehow don't quite jive. Tell me why you chose anatomy and physiology. Was it because it would help you in your understanding for your makeup?
I think it does, because you understand I've as a makeup artist, I love creating something on someone that can transform them. But I think as I got into my late 20s, early 30s, actually my mid 20s, I really got into yoga and well-being. And so even at like 24, 25, I was growing vegetables at one point with my boyfriend at the time. And I really I wanted to understand the body and science. And my whole family is medical, which I hadn't really put that on myself. But I just thought, holistically, I've always been that person that goes, why? Why? I'd like to know. I won't just be happy with one answer. So my mum used to say, oh, God, you're a nightmare. If I brought you to the dentist, I'd want to know, but what's happening with that? And what's that going to do to that? I'm very curious, and I always have been as a kid. So I then thought, if I do anatomy and physiology and pathology for a year, I'll have a good understanding of the engine, the body, because I wanted to know more. I wanted to know the basic science. So that was absolutely brilliant. And that I was going through a phase of thinking I might study nutrition or it's the same course you can do if you want to become a yoga instructor or you want to go down any alternative um, medical path or start on that journey. You need to get, they call it APMP. And it's a lot of studying, but it's a brilliant course and you can do them all over the place. But I absolutely loved it and it just helped me understand everything. But I then didn't do any of the stuff I was going to do with it because I think I had my son at 18 months, maybe after I got that qualification. So then and I was so busy with work, I then didn't have time to go and retrain or do something on the side, which is what's wonderful about being a makeup artist. You can choose to work as much as you want or don't want. But I loved it. And so like for now, I still am obsessed with understanding how our body absorbs food, what the gut, the understanding of our complete 360 well-being, the mind-body connection, how the body keeps the score about anything you've experienced in your life and how stress manifests and cell renewal. And I don't want to figure out how to be the perfect human or how to live forever. It's just about living well, but having joy at the same time, but not being perfect. I quite like learning about all of it. Just love it. I'm a big reader. So I never did anything with that qualification, but I've just got it. I think I did it for me, if I'm honest. I just did it for myself. So I can understand the systems and how they work. And luckily, in an emergency situation, because of the whole family being very medical, I'm very calm and understand everything. But I'm curious. So this whole new phase of life with the menopausal, perimenopausal phase of life, which myself and many of my peers are all heading into or we're in, it's fascinating that no one really spoke about these things years ago, and finding out and asking questions and speaking to my mum and just being curious is fascinating. And my niece is studying medicine at Hull University. And I'm like, Isabel, your job is to change the establishment so we understand more about female health and well-being. That the women's bodies are studied just as much as male bodies. So, I don't know. I have this really strong sense of justice about things, especially to do with the female and learning, I guess. Yeah.
Are you where you want to be at this point in life?
Yeah, I feel like I've done a bit of everything. In the makeup world, I feel like I've covered all the bases. I've traveled all over the world with amazing people. I've ended up becoming more of a personal makeup artist in the last 10 years, which has been brilliant because it means you get booked out by clients for chunks of time, which means you kind of know where you are, which is really a gift when you are a mother. And that's my other job. The last 13 years has been a mother. So I thought, if I've got one shot at this, let's try and do it really well as have my career still, because I love working. I love the creativity. And I look back and I go, wow, I was lucky that I did start when I did, because I ticked all the boxes. And I still really love being a makeup artist and being in that environment. But I like it when I'm with people that are good people, good energy. That's the thing. I can't be around. There was back in the sort of early millennium, there was a lot of egos, and people's insecurities can come across as rude. And I've seen it all in different environments, and I haven't got time to be wasting on sort of the dancing of egos that happened, which does happen. It's what happens in your 20s and into your 30s, I think. And then the older you get, you just start dropping these parts that you don't need or don't serve you anymore, like the facades. But you need those facades when you're younger, because it's like a sort of, I don't know, like a guard. But I'm very content right now. Yeah. And I love that work comes and I can say yes or no. And I love that I can have time to explore all the other things that I want to explore, which is great. Which is obviously definitely something that definitely starts happening at this stage.
So when you look back then, Patsy, at your career, often we have milestones that have been career changing, signposts along the way that have really made a difference to the direction you're going now. What would you say those were for your career?
Yeah, in my early 20s, there was moments where I had music artists and record companies requesting me through the artist having maybe done one photo shoot and using me as a makeup artist. And they're like, oh, I want her to do the promo tour and the album cover. And those moments were pivotal because then I started mainly working in music. Then luckily, by the time the music industry started changing, I was doing personals, but a real variety. And that was a huge shift in the caliber of work. And then I would say, when I had my son, I could see really clearly how it was going to be a different journey after having him. I'd be saying yes and no for different reasons to jobs. And I was so glad I had quite the traveling wild time before that, because it meant that I could then go, okay, I can say no and not be going, being really annoyed, because the truth is, it is hard to do it all, because, you can be. I did a job where I was away for 5 or 6 weeks. I was away in Australia, and Arlo was he 6 or 7, maybe 6.5 or 7. And that was tough. And I went to LA when he was very tiny, like over a year. And that was tough. I was only there for about a week or two. But I didn't like going away anymore. It was the weirdest thing. Now I can. Now it's different. I've gone full circle. Because I went away for a month earlier this year for work. And that was great. And yeah, but I think I took becoming a mother quite seriously. And I think for every reason, I never thought I would be one. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is a very serious job.
And this is with your partner, Richard Jakes, who's a camera operator. So he's in the business as well.
Well, Richard isn't Arlo's father. I haven't been with Arlo's father since Arlo was 7. 7? Yeah, he was 7 when we parted. But in the early years of Arlo being small, my ex-partner was setting up a business himself, and I was pretty much supporting him and encouraging him to flourish. And he is now, which is great. So I was the worker. I was the breadwinner, as they say. Is that the phrase? Yeah. I was the breadwinner of that dynamic. So he then picked up on childcare. But mainly, I think my dad was really helpful because he lived down the road. And my sister was incredible. She actually did 3 months nannying for me when she was transitioning careers. And then I just hemorrhaged a lot of money. It's very expensive to work and have a child. So then I worked it out a couple of years ago. I spent about £52,000 on childcare in my son's first 5 years of his life. And that was on nannies and nurseries in order to leave the house and work. And you can only do that if you're working on really amazing jobs with amazing people. Then I said yes to clients that I knew were just loyal and lovely people to work with once my son was born, because it's really important that people get it, that you work with people that understand that there is a life, there is a balance as well as working. So that's been brilliant. But this year, when I went away, Richard and Arlo had a great time without me. Because my son's school is very close to our house. And I think I said to my son, he said, when you come, don't rush back, we're having a great time. And I was like, oh, okay. So between him having the odd weekend with his dad but Monday to Friday and quite a few of the weekends, it was just him and Richard. They just had a great time. I was like, oh, okay. And luckily, he understands the industry. He'll go off and work for chunks of time, and it worked out really well that when I was away, he was about. So it's very. I've never had a partner who works in the creative industry of ad hocness, like the way. But he's more film, so he gets he does films and commercials, but he understands it. That is absolutely amazing. He understands the creativity, the dynamics of people, and how things can change at the last minute. Some people wouldn't understand that, but I absolutely, as organised, I'm very organised, finicky person, as all my friends would say. But I'm also, really like the fact that things can change. So I always joke that I'm an organised hippie because I'm so into my herbalism, plant medicine, everything. And then on the other side, can be quite regimented.
Well, you mentioned how you enjoyed mentoring as well. So I'm wondering, being able to juggle your career and motherhood, what you would say to young women listening to this who want to get into the industry.
I wouldn't flower it up. I'd say I think a lot of young women feel pressure, so much pressure, because we obviously have a window of ovulating in our life. That's just how women's bodies work. And that's really tough. And you often haven't got a clue if you want to be a mother or be responsible for bringing a human into the world between the ages of 20 and 40. You haven't got a clue. For me, it was a gift and the best thing that ever happened. The best leveler for me was Arlo. I sometimes go, wow, thank goodness you came into my life. You're meant to be here. But I think the advice is, don't listen to anybody else. And if it happens, it will all work out. And if you want a family, you can do it all. I love that I know so many people, 10 years, 15 years younger than me, that are having kids and working. Yes, it's hard work, put everything in place to be able to tick all the boxes, but you can do it. You can do it, but you just have to have a huge amount of support. And I think it's a great career for actually being a mother. You just need to got to a point where you're confident enough to say yes and no to jobs, because your career will always still be there. And you become more resourceful. You become so resourceful once you've got another person to keep alive. Something shifts. Well, it did for me, I would say. And yeah, and I don't think it's fair that women pressurize women by a certain age. I've got so many friends that have had babies between 40 and 50. And for me, it worked, but I could have easily not have become a mother. Does that make sense? It wasn't something I was so into. Career and traveling and having a great time, really. But it was a good leveler for me. But I still live quite a full life. I believe that, my son can see life and creativity through me as well. And I'm very, very lucky. He's like super creative, which is brilliant. So we can do stuff together. We can do our art projects together and make things, build things, do things. I love it, which is brilliant.
Well, I was wondering about the young girl who used to love drawing, if you still have time for those things. So clearly you do. You enjoy, do you painting at all?
I've always brought painting materials and some form of canvas or paper with me whenever I've gone anywhere in the world, whether that's India. I used to travel around India and Thailand an awful lot years ago, and I always sketch and draw things. And I had a boyfriend who was an artist as well, who we would do an awful lot of drawings together. And I've always done some form of creative drawing, I guess, in an amateur manner, I would say. But I'd say the real creative element has been, I love interior design. I love reconstructing a home and physically taking something apart and rebuilding it and being visual. I can walk into a space and visualize how it could look instantly, and I can sketch it out. I love doing that. And me and Richard just finished renovating our house last year, which was a big project, and it was pretty tough living on site and project managing, but it's wonderful and it's magical, and I've really felt like it expressed a creativity that I was visualizing, and that has spurred me on thinking about maybe studying down that route and learning some of the technical side of things that I don't know. Sketching, yes, I can do, but I don't understand the computerized system. I'd love to just see if I can soak it up, whether I can learn it. But I also really want to get back into painting freely. And I was chatting to another makeup artist about this, about how as a makeup artist, you become quite contained. You're three-dimensional because you're working with a face, but there's a containment to what we're doing. And I need to loosen that up. I really want to practice more abstract painting again. I don't know why or how I'm going to do it, but I will make myself again start painting. I want to start painting on a larger scale. I don't know, it's something that's just the last year that I really, really have to do. But yeah, I need to loosen up, because as a makeup artist, I'm very detailed, and I know how to work with certain faces and certain skins, and working with color palettes. It's all instinctive, and that definitely comes from an art background. It's one of the things when anyone says to me, "Oh, my daughter wants to be a makeup artist. She's always doing her own makeup." I'm like, okay, because I never did that. I never did my own makeup. I just was interested in art. And I always say, are they creative? Are they interested in other things apart from lipstick? Because there are so many things that will feed in to the makeup artistry, the image making of being a makeup artist. Like the photographer, Tim Walker, if you look at any of his work, it's just, and he works with a few makeup artists repeatedly, because they have a collaboration that creates this magic when they do a shoot. And like Val Garland, who's like one of the gods of makeup artists, she's always pushed it. And that's mainly, she's like the queen of catwalk. And it's a theatre show, a catwalk is. So I think it is interesting, because your show is showing up how no matter what visual artistry you come from, there is this full 360 of a creative field that comes into that one thing you might end up doing that pays your bills in life. But what gets you there is normally a love of something that's creative, making, doing. Yeah. And that's why I always say, gosh, and I'll never make money while I sleep, because I love doing things with my hands. So if I want to figure something out, I'll go and learn it. Like upholstery. I had a beautiful mid-century sofa and armchair. And I was like, well, why am I going to pay an upholsterer over £1,000 to do this when I can do a course for £400 and then learn? So that's what I did instead.
So what next for you then professionally, Patsy? Well, what have you got lined up this year?
So I've got one of my big clients. I've got some work with her coming up. We just did a really big job for Netflix in May. So that was full on. That was away working for a month. So I've just taken a bit of time out. And then I'm going to be, doing different jobs with that client. And then it will just be ad hoc, new clients, bit of editorial if it comes in, just different bits. And then looking at doing this interiors course and getting the art practice going. So I am currently making space for these other things, which is quite uncomfortable saying it out loud. But I don't know if you've ever had this where you're going, okay, I need to do this and I need to make time for this other thing. And I guess I'm trying to make time for that at the moment, which is painting.
a journey of discovery, adventure, and lots more to look forward to, Patsy. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show and share your journey with us, and look forward to what might come in the future.
Let's see. I know. There's always 100 different things to do, isn't there? So
yeah, it is. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you very much. I feel like I've chewed your head off, but I can do that. Quite good reminiscing.
And don't forget to scroll down the show notes for a link to Patsy's website and her social media. And you'll also find a link to our Instagram too, and our email address, all in the show notes accompanying this episode. Don't forget, if you're on iTunes or Apple Podcast, I should say, we do love a review and rating on there, because that helps others find the show. So if you have a minute and you're listening there, do leave us a 5-star rating and a review. We really appreciate it. My thanks again to my guest this week, Patsy O'Neill, and to you, as always, for listening. I'll be back next Tuesday when my guest will be the South African artist Carla Bosch. So I do hope you'll join me then.